one of the things Leroy talked about was these smaller ceremonies, what we call wedding, or small ceremonies. And with that, at Gaini Wage time, that belongs to the male faith keepers. And after we conduct that ceremony, we pass that small ceremonies back to the women faith keepers. I guess that's their duties to look after those small ceremonies. So they'll kind of set them dates to when we're going to have it. And then when these small ceremonies we talked about, up to the sun and the moon, planting, finish planting, berries come on, then the women faith keepers pass it back to the men to conduct the gathering of the fruit ceremony. That goes back to the men to conduct that ceremony. Because with that ceremony, there comes a lot of stuff comes out of that ceremony. That when we're going to have Gai Rio in the fall, and it's a kind of a long ceremony that takes place. There's a lot of, as I start learning the language and understanding more, there's quite a bit of happens that day. So once that ceremony is conducted, we get into the growing season, I guess. Sanigagan His, I guess, the length of our summer. Upagin Hadig. Our sustenance is starting to grow. I'll say those again once up. Means that it's new, it's broke through the earth again. Usually the first one that comes on is the beans, the green beans, and so the women faith keepers are observing the gardens. They'll see those beans are pretty much ripe, then they'll set that date to have bean dance. And so we gather for the bean dance, and they're the main ones, the beans. But it's also the other Gyonheko too is involved with that. So we conduct that ceremony, bean dance. Askanya Gaina Gai Ka. Ostoa go up first. Askanya Gaina Gai Ka Osaheta and Onyosa. So the bean dance and the squash dance, I guess squash, or like how you would translate.
And the women's dance.
Yeah, and the women's dance. So that's how we, like he said, we entertained them. We entertained the foods, okay, that they're growing again. We get to see them. So after we do the bean dance, and our summer's growing along again, and next thing you know, we have the corns growing. And same with the women faith keepers, their duty is to watch that corn, see how it's coming along. And once it gets to a certain stage where it's almost getting ripe, they'll set a ceremony called Niga Kwa'a, the small green corn, I guess they call it. And so then we'll gather again for that. With lower Kyugas, we kind of do the same ceremonies. Stoa Goa, Eskanya Gaina Gai Ka, Osa Heita, and Onyosa. So we use them same ceremonies to do the small green corn. And the different longhouses are Onondagas, Seneca longhouse, they might do a little bit different. But it all still means the same. We're still giving thanks that we got to see the Gyonheko again. So even with that small ceremony, with the women faith keepers, they're observing again how that corn is growing. Because of that small green corn, they'll set the Gaini Wage again, the Kapoana. Now they Quahig, Kapoana. Gaini Wage, the 4 ceremonies, like big food gathering. Okay, so that's their duty, is to watch that. And once we set that green corn, they'll say, well, we'll have Gaini Wage in 2 or 3 weeks. And so once that ceremony is done, the women will pass that Gaini Wage back to the Monat Tondanya, the male faith keepers. So that's when they'll conduct that Gaini Wage. And from there, where we're sitting this time of year, I guess, all our longhouses are just finished putting Gaini Wage through the 4 ceremonies, the big harvest time. So we're all pretty much caught up to our cycle of seasons here.
What we have, we have also something that we didn't really talk about is we have ceremonies for our ancestors, and that takes place in the spring and also in the fall. So we have that, and we also have the medicine men. We call them Hadui and Gajisa. Our grandfathers, they visit the village house to house. So we have those around the same time, the ceremony for our ancestors. So maybe within 1 week or 2 weeks, then we have our house to house. That's a cleansing of the village. That's what that's for. And they follow the turn of the season. So once the season is, we're right in the middle of the season turning right now. So somewhere is probably within a month, I would say, these ceremonies will take place for our ancestors. We always seem to have those ceremonies once it's freezing. So if we start getting frost and freezing is happening, then they have a ceremony, the big ceremony for our ancestors. We honor our ancestors. We have Remembrance Day twice a year. That's the way I put it. We have a Remembrance Day celebration of our dead relatives, and we acknowledge them in the ceremony. The ones who've gone on, we say Ohan Don Jadon. That's the ones that have gone on before us. So we have ceremony twice a year in their memory and to honor them. And again, that's all been passed down, how those things happen. And the longhouses, a lot of responsibility is in our mothers. We call our women folk. So even with that, with the ceremony for our ancestors, every longhouse has women that are in charge of that, and they coordinate it, and they'll get together a meeting and set a date, and then they'll get things rolling. There's a lot of work to go into that, because it's a big deal when we have that ceremony. So those also take place. The ceremony for our ancestors takes place twice a year, spring and fall, and the same thing with the medicine men. Spring and fall, we have ceremony for the Hadui and Gadisa, our grandfathers, and that's cleansing of the village and to thank them for what they do, and we have a ceremony together with them. So those spirits are old as the earth. They were here before people, far as we know, by the way that it's been passed down. So we're their grandchildren. So we call them grandfather, and we're their grandchildren, those spirits. So those ceremonies take place as well. And some longhouses have one last ceremony in the fall, and they call it the end of the season. And it's ceremonially the hunters are released to go hunting. The reason why that is done is because they're now setting them off to start the hunt for the midwinter, to start a new cycle again. So the speeches used at the end are about that. They'll try and encourage men to be faithful and be diligent at hunting, and for them to keep track of the movement of the sun and the moon, because there's a certain moon where they tell them to return with their kill and report to the leaders how they made out, so we know we're good to go with the midwinter ceremony at the start of our new year. So I think it's about covers. Yeah. In between there we have like right now, this time of the season, we have Gaiwio going on. Yeah. And the Gaiwio is it's our prophecies. So every fall we gather, the Haudenosaunee, the Longhouse people gather, and we start out in Tonawanda. All the 5 nations or 6 nations gather, and they set the dates where they're going to go, and the speakers are chosen, who's going to be the speaker of the prophecy this fall. And that we travel to all the different communities for 5 to 6 weeks every fall, and it's a renewal of that message. So everybody is reminded of our teachings and our laws and our prophecies and our ceremonies and leadership systems and our moral conduct. All of that is all refreshed, and that's what we're engaged in at this season right now. So that's something as well that is of high importance to our maintaining our identity and maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
With our with that road we're on now of Gaiwio, helping the 5 nations help each other's communities. In our teachings, that's where we follow our cycle of ceremonies out of Gaiwio, how the Creator intended we conduct these ceremonies with the Geni Wage Saktek Shrahe Gai Hoyauni, the midwinter time stated ceremony. Is, like I mentioned earlier, that's when we ask that we're going to see all these things again. And then we have the strawberry ceremony. That's one of the ones that come from the Creator to conduct. That will be medicine to us. And then the Gini Wage Gakowana, the harvest, big harvest ceremony. That's when we give thanks that we got to see everything again that's growing here, all the plants and medicines, the Gyunheko. So at that time of year, that's when we give thanks to that. And one thing we forgot to mention is that's when the babies get names. Okay, all the babies, the new children that are standing along, they'll have names. So that's one of the ceremonies that they'll get their names in there. So this time of year, it's really important too that we conduct this Kaikui, we keep it going. And Leroy here is one of the speakers in Cayuga language. He does it in almost 4 days in Onondaga language now. So that's a really impressive accomplishment that he's put a lot of work into that. And with me to only been learning a short time, it's nice to be able to sit and listen to him converse in the language and be able to follow him along. So that's a nice feeling to do that. And we're sort of finishing up our cycle of seasons, and we still, like you said, we got a few more ceremonies to go, and then we start new. We get a break. We get a couple months break. And
at that time, we're usually doing medicine ceremonies in the community, though, so it's not really a break.
No.
It means a break from the big deal.
Yeah, but we're always on the go for helping the families. So.
Yeah, we do a lot of medicine and healing and the ceremony stuff that go with that. So that's a whole nother ball of wax there.
Yeah. So our learning never stops. Anyways, I give great credit to our elders that we have left to acknowledge what they knew and how much they have in their head that they can conduct these ceremonies at any given time.
Yeah.
And that's really, I'm really respectful of that, of our elders.
Yeah, they took most of the elders that I learned from, we really had no methodology to how they're going to teach somebody with no language comprehension and how to train them and teach them to do these things we're doing. So I was pretty fortunate I got a chance to spend time around elders who were interested in that, and we put our minds together and developed some methodology and some tactics, and it's been an ongoing development. There's many things happening now that weren't there even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and that's what we're engaged in, is utilizing any methodology that we feel is going to help, so the younger speakers coming up, they can follow our footprints in how we done this, and transmitting this knowledge and carrying it forth, carrying on the ceremonies and studying for them, and that's been one of our biggest accomplishments, is being a part of that development of methodology and learning language and learning to speaking and how to do that and how to understand, how to relate with other communities. That all comes together. So thankful for that.